Hi, everyone. You got Rod Crandall here, Chief Integration Officer at U.S. Advisors Insurance. You've got Andrew Casilius and George Steele maybe next to me or maybe below me. We are your success team. Thanks for tuning in. This is our monthly version of what we call our Coach's Corner. I know many of you have attended these in the past. Thank you for that. We record all of these as well. So if you missed one, we do keep a library. And we do these calls again once per month. So if you have specific topics that you'd like to address, please reach out to Andrew, George, or myself as we literally do these for you. So at the end of the day, U.S. Advisors is really an agency built by advisors for advisors. And what we really specialize in is intentionally incorporating insurance planning into a wealth advisor's practice. And so today, in the next roughly 50 minutes to an hour, we're going to really be talking about some effective estate and legacy maximization strategies. Really be talking about who do we need to talk to, how do we need to be talking to them, what do we talk to them about, and what kind of headwinds are we dealing with that make these types of things, these types of planning items very important. And so by the end of today, we're really hopeful that you may have in mind maybe 2 or 3 clients that you need to have a conversation similar to what we're going to be describing here today. And to the extent that you have that person, use us as your success team to make sure that you have the right kind of process, the right kind of questions, the right kind of material to set yourself and your clients up for success. So hopefully you're going to get a lot out of this. And with that, we're going to get started. So again, as we described, the real plan for today is really talking about how can we reduce the cost of death, right? That's kind of a weird thing to say, the cost of death. But guess what? Death does cost something, doesn't it? And we need to think about what that is because that can effectively reduce our legacy value. Okay, so we need to understand that. So how can we reduce that or be more efficient? We also want to talk about how can we better position and utilize life insurance contracts in the context of estate maximization, in the context of financial planning, and understanding that when done appropriately and correctly, insurance can really be an asset, doesn't have to be a cost. And these assets can be wonderful complements to the overall portfolio because they have attributes that most of the other assets do not have. The biggest of which being tax favored attributes, which are most often tax free. And we often minimize the cost of taxes in the sense that we don't think of it as a cost. We take it for granted. Well, some taxes are voluntary and our best clients get really crushed with taxes. And it's our belief that taxes are going up and maybe going up significantly. We want to describe that to you as well. And so if we really want to engage in a planning opportunity that makes our clients have better outcomes and keep more of their money, in order to do that, we have to position things appropriately. And in order to position things appropriately, we really have to have a better conversation with our clients. If we go to our clients and say, you need to talk about insurance, you should buy some insurance, why don't you pay for some insurance? The likelihood of being able to help them implement is probably very low. What we need to pay attention to is we need to pay attention to the idea that we need to touch the heart before we touch the mind. And so much of insurance planning is around touching the heart first, which is really about understanding what's important to our clients and asking them how they feel about things. And then to the extent that they care about the items we're describing, then we can appeal to their logical nature by showing how effective these contracts can be mathematically. So it's a combination of touching the heart and the mind at once. We want to try to clue you into how we sort of view that and maybe give you some tips on that basis. Okay. So Andrew pulled together some really great articles that I thought I would just start out with here. We have links, of course, if you want copies of this, we're going to send all of this information out to you following this call. But one article here is around estate planning considerations that it's not just for the super rich. You think about estate planning, it's really about answers, right? And if we don't have an estate plan, we need to revisit that estate plan because things might be happening. We're going to show you that things are happening, I think, with inflation and with taxes and estate taxes that might create an ability to revisit your estate plan. And then, by the way, marriages, births, divorces, those are all reasons to really do that. The key is really to have a plan and try to be flexible enough because when you have a plan, there's that concept of best laid plans, right? Or man makes plans and God laughs. So you put a plan together, but you don't want to put it in concrete often. You want to be flexible enough to be able to make that happen. And you got to be careful. And that last that last little blurb there about not letting the tax tail wag the dog. Right? Now that one's tricky because you're going to see a lot of the reasons we should really look at this is because of the cost of taxes. But we got to do this appropriately and in context. And by the way, that's really why U.S. advisors, we focus on working with wealth advisors that do comprehensive financial planning, because that gives us the best arena and the best context by which to make these recommendations. So I'd encourage you to read this article after we send it out to you. Second article we put in is that a plan is only as good as the plan is funded. So a lot of times we have plans in place, but we don't have them funded, right? And I really like this this one that I tell my clients, if they've drawn up all the documents in the world but haven't funded them, it's like joining a gym, buying the sneakers and the workout clothes, but never actually working out. I know none of you have ever done that, right? I know I've never done that. But that's interesting. So not only do we need to create a plan, but we ultimately need to fund that plan. And so that's what we're really going to hope to move forward and talk to you about today. Andrew, you have any comments on that before we go into it a little more deeply?
No, I second what you have said. Estate planning really is not all about making sure that we put the client in a situation where they don't have to deal with state or federal estate taxes, because at this point, I would think that 95% maybe of our clients won't have that issue. But it's really about keeping the family in the forefront, right? And like you said, touching the hearts before touching the logic side, the wallet of the client, asking those questions. Is family important? How would you like to leave the legacy? What kind of legacy would you like to leave, both financially and otherwise? And, that's what really estate planning is about. It's not about making sure that the client is, in a situation where they don't have to pay any taxes.
Yep, exactly right. It's this idea of having the answers that we need at the time that we need them. And that's really what this is about. And if we wait until the time that we need them to answer the questions, we don't know the answers, and it puts our entire family in jeopardy effectively, especially if we wait till death or disability, because now we have high emotional times as well, trying to make good logical decisions. And so when you really look at what our job is, what I believe my job is, and what I believe your job as a financial advisor is to help motivate our clients to operate in their own best interest. And we do that through a planning methodology. What's important to you? What do you have? What do we need to do? And then figuring out in our side of the world, to what extent do insurance strategies belong inside of that plan as a funding vehicle? And that's where it gets really exciting, because some of the things that insurance companies can do is really outstanding when understood appropriately and in context. So when we're talking about legacy, we need to consider what factors or items exist that can ultimately reduce our legacy value, and in some cases can reduce them very significantly. Well, we're going to have clients that are subject to federal estate tax. We're going to share for a minute, or in a minute rather, about what the history of that's been. We're at about $12 million each today. So to Andrew's point, today, most of our clients are not going to be subject to federal estate tax, but we have a sunset coming up. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Okay. But even though most of our clients are not subject to the federal estate tax, many of them are subject to the state estate tax. Most people on this call are going to be from Minnesota or Illinois, two states that both have a state estate tax, and we're going to show those to you. And I know that a lot of our clients are currently subject to the state estate tax, and that does create a reduction in value. Could also be estates that lack liquidity. Well, interestingly, you might have a very wealthy family or client that has very little liquidity, because they might be concentrated in a family business, or maybe they have a business, a family farm, maybe they have a large real estate portfolio, and to the extent that taxes may be due, how many acres are we going to sell? Which property are we going to sell? Right, and that can become problematic when you think about the timing of that, right? Because generally estate taxes are due within 9 months after the second death. And so those that lack liquidity, well, maybe insurance ought to be in that portfolio. Life insurance shows up not only at the exact time that liquidity is needed at death, but it shows up in cash. And so how valuable is it to have an asset that shows up in cash? And that's the kind of thing we need to be thinking about. Clients that require long-term care services. Well, this is the most important insurance planning item out there, in my opinion, is the long-term care piece, what I call retirement portfolio protection. Okay? To what extent can our legacy be reduced if one of us needs care? Okay, the average cost of care in Minneapolis is a little higher than Chicago. I recently found out around $12,000 and $14,000 a month for a private room in a nursing home. Okay, it's a big number. An Alzheimer's event could last 7, 8, 10 years. Could you imagine what the impact would be on someone's estate at $12,000 or $13,000 or $14,000 a month for 8 years? These are the kind of things we need to be asking about. We need to ask how clients feel about this, and more importantly, what would their plan be for something like that, right? And then estates with large qualified accounts. Okay, these large qualified accounts, this is all about non-spousal inherited IRAs, which you're probably aware now need to be spent down in 10 years on a maximum basis. So if you take me, for example, the last type of asset that I would personally want to inherit today would be an IRA from my parents. The reason for that is that whatever I inherit from them, I don't need today. I would want that in my retirement bucket. Don't need it today, but I have to take it in the next 10 years. Have to. So now I'm taking it and I don't want to. But more egregiously, in my opinion, is I have to take it at my highest marginal tax bracket. Every dollar that I earn is already being taxed, and then I have to take this additional distribution, and I'm going to be in the highest tax bracket for me, my highest marginal tax bracket, and that becomes a problem. And so a lot of clients, talk about the kids. Well, the kids might be 50 or 60 years old. The kids might be a physician or a successful business owner, and they might see a reduction in the qualified balance of 40%. Right? And people don't often think about this. So these are the things I want you guys thinking about when you think about the 1, 2, 3, or maybe 4 clients that we ought to be discussing after this call, right? Anything else to add on this one, Andrew?
Just one comment about long-term care. Not only it's a client's retirement portfolio protection, it's the AUM protection as well.
Thank you.
Because if we have to start pulling out $10,000 plus per month, that's going to have a significant impact for advisors' practice too.
That's huge. No, you're exactly right. Because the question is, absent a long-term care plan, where's the money going to come from? And I would suggest that there's a good portion of that money that's going to come from the portfolio. And if it comes from the portfolio, that's reducing your AUM. By the way, what if it's coming from the portfolio in a year like this year? If you're in a year like this year, do you really want to be redeeming shares, right? So again, we need to think about the funding vehicle that is insurance. You can see what I'm sharing up here today. I hope nobody's getting dizzy. Every time I look at this clock, I just go, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. So this is U.S.
I get dizzy and angry.
Dizzy and angry, yeah. And then you vacillate between the two, right? Well, this is really, really interesting. If you guys haven't seen this, I would encourage you to take a look at it offline. I would encourage you to
share with clients too, right?
Absolutely, and I've done that as well. So what this is this is calculating in real time the various debt and revenue that we have all over. I'm going to spend about 5 minutes here, and I'm going to show you a couple of things that stick out to me. Right here in this left-hand column, this left hand right here, U.S. national debt at $31 trillion today. And going up every second. Look at this, it's just going up. That debt comes to $93,000 per citizen of the United States, but it's $247,000 per taxpayer. I just find that incredible. That's $31 trillion. Now take a look up here. We got this debt clock time machine. I want to go back to 2012, 10 years ago. So remember, we're at 31 trillion today. If I flop to 2012, we were at $15.7 trillion. So in the last 10 years, our national debt has doubled. Okay, that's significant. Okay, now let's take a look at what they're expecting in 2026. So 4 years from now, they're expecting a national debt to be a little over $40 trillion. Okay, so this is very significant. How are we going to pay for that debt? And I would suggest to you that there's a very good chance that we're going to pay with higher taxes, right? And that's what we really need to be thinking about. And a lot of our planning we're doing with our clients is planning for 20 and 30 and 40 years away from today, right? And thinking that 20, 30, or 40 years away from today, that tax rates are going to be lower than they are today, I just don't think is true. And so the conventional wisdom needs to be challenged. I'm not suggesting we shouldn't put money in an IRA or a 401k or a cash balance plan. I believe we should do that. But I don't believe it's a no-brainer anymore like it used to be. Okay? I don't believe it's a no-brainer anymore because I think the future taxes are going to exceed the current taxes for a lot of our clients. So a couple other things I want to show you. They do have a world debt clock. I just find this really interesting, and maybe you do too. So here's United States, 31 trillion. China, not that we believe their numbers, but take a look at this. I just kind of find this sort of interesting. And then if we go back one, they do that for states as well. So there's a state debt clock here. So let's look at Minnesota. Okay, so you look at Minnesota, takes a second to roll up. There we go, right? Here's our debt. So I just think this is interesting, and it's something, again, I would encourage you to take a look at. I would encourage you to share with your clients, because under the context of what we're talking about is that our best clients are going to have large tax exposure. It's going to be one of their largest costs, and this is demonstrating the likelihood that that will continue to happen. Andrew, anything stick out to you here, or any additional thoughts?
Yeah, not to get overly political here, but we constantly hear, from our representatives and politicians that, taxes will not go up on anybody under $400,000, but, hold on to your wallet if you're, making 400K or more. And again, best clients that we serve are in that range. So it seems like, they're immune by promising to tax the rich. And, these are the clients that are going to be mostly affected by some of those potential changes. So a lot of these strategies could significantly improve their legacy planning. So again, that's the context that I would want to use when showing this debt clock.
Yep. That makes perfect sense to me, and I don't know if it'll surprise any of you out there, but I think a lot of the work that I do in particular is with clients that don't strictly need these insurance strategies, but they want them because they understand where it fits, and what they're really trading off is the cost of insurance for the cost of taxes. So the people who put the most insurance in place are the wealthiest among us, including large corporations. And so often the real reason for that is the inherent tax benefits. If you can save 20% in taxes, 30% in taxes, 40%, 50% in taxes in some cases, how much insurance costs can be justifiable if you can eliminate a cost that's that high for our best clients? And so that's really where I think it's sort of interesting. All right, so let's pop up our PowerPoint again. Okay. I think it should flop. There we go. So here's the historical federal estate taxes from 2010 to today. So today you're at about $12 million per person in 2020. And that's up from like 5 million about 12 years ago. I was telling Andrew before this call, I started in September of 2000 in this business, and the estate tax exemption at that time was 675,000. So we
Wow.
went from 675,000 to $12 million in the last 22 years. Well, you guys are probably aware, many if not most of you on the call, that there's currently a sunset provision for these estate taxes that in 2026 is going to drop back to about $6 million a piece. Okay, so it's going to be cut in half. That's going to expose a lot of clients that are currently not exposed to federal estate taxes today. And that's going to happen in 4 years without a legislation change. So that's already the law that's in place today. And so I think a lot of people have sort of gone away, if you will, of the importance of doing estate planning because of estate taxes, because effectively anyone who's worth less than 20 or $25 million has little to no exposure, and that's most of the country, right? But now that number is going to be cut in half. And I know for a fact that there's people on this call that have clients that are going to be subject to this estate tax in the future, and we're actually working on a couple of these cases right now as we move forward.
And Rod, there is some growing belief that that exemption may even go to 3 million or 3.5 because again of that debt clock. They need tax revenue from every which corner to try to balance the budget. So lowering that exemption to potentially 3.5 million could be one way to do it.
Yep, that's a very good point, and that's kind of my thought is that they're going to raise taxes, but what does that mean? Where, when, and how? And Andrew, you said it's a lot easier to raise it on the rich, and it's easier to get something approved by lowering an exemption as well. And so I wouldn't be shocked if that occurred either. And so it's something again for us to pay attention to, and it speaks to that need for flexibility that we opened this up in, right? Because best laid plans, and we can only move forward with what the rules are today. So that's the federal estate taxes. Well, what are we dealing with from an estate, make that a state estate tax standpoint? So you can see that this screen shows all of the states that have their own tax. As I mentioned, probably 80% of the people on this call are from Minnesota or Illinois. So if you're in Minnesota, you only have a $3 million exemption, and anything above 3 million is taxable between 13 and 16%. That exposes a lot of clients. And so people think of federal estate taxes, I got 22 million. Well, we only have 3 million in Minnesota before it kicks in. And in Illinois, we only have 4 million. And they're taking somewhere between 80 basis points and 16% above that. So again, these are things that can affect, again, the legacy value. Okay. Anything to add on this one?
No, this is probably the most overlooked um, tax trap, if you will, that many people are not aware. Certainly, a lot of clients may not be aware of it.
Yep. And if you're not aware of it and you have an illiquid estate and you're worth $10 million and you need to pay 15% of 7 million and you have a $1 million state estate tax due in 9 months, where is that $1 million going to come from? Is it going to come from the portfolio you're managing for that client? Are they going to liquidate a property? Are they going to sell shares in their business? Are they going to liquidate acres from their farm? Are they going to go borrow money from the bank? See, that's what ends up happening. If I don't have the liquidity, I go borrow from the bank. Well, that's good news that I can borrow from the bank, but what does that do? It actually makes my $1 million cost even more. Right? So again, what if the problem was death, had a solution of life insurance that paid in cash that could create the liquidity that we need to be able to make this happen, right? So there's the context that we're describing there. And so is it valuable, or how valuable is it to know the true value of the legacy at death? See, I'm a big fan of the market. I have dollars in the market, knowing that, this year I'm down. I got to admit, I didn't open up my October statement. I just didn't. I just know better. I don't want to see it. I know I'm down. Okay, I'm a believer in the market, absolutely. But is there any value in knowing what the ending value is going to be? It's hard to know what the ending value of my investment accounts is going to be, but I can know what that value is of my insurance account. And so if I had an asset that was guaranteed and I knew the value of it, and it was non-correlated to the market, and it was income tax free to the heirs, would that be valuable? And I'm suggesting to you that many people aren't considering insurance as an asset class, and they ought to be, because insurance companies are effectively professional money managers and professional risk managers, and they can offer guarantees. And you might be very surprised at the rate of return that they can pay. I'm going to show you a couple of case studies in a minute to demonstrate this. People think life insurance is too expensive, and sometimes that may be true. But for the right client, it's not expensive at all. It's a beautiful alternate asset class that does things that none of the other assets do. And we're going to walk through that and share that with you a little bit here in a minute. Okay. But if we're going to do that, as I described before, you're going to have to be able to get into a better conversation with clients. Okay, there is a lot of negativity, as I'm sure you're aware, around insurance, insurance companies, insurance producers, or salespeople. And maybe some, if not a lot of it, is valid. But if we just go to our clients and we ask them to buy insurance, the answer is no. If we tell them, well, you have an exposure and you need to give me $10,000 a year for your insurance premiums, the answer is no. Right? So again, we have to touch their heart, as we talked about briefly at the top. And in doing that, it's all about what's important to them and how they feel about things, right? So I just had a conversation just earlier today with a client, and they said that it's very important that they leave a legacy for their kids. And I said, well, can you describe to me what that really means? They said, well, it's really hard to say, but I would really hate it if my entire 401k was eaten up because I needed to be in the rest home. This was this person's words, right? And she said that that would make her very upset if that happened. And I said, well, what would be the consequences if that happened? And she almost started crying. And she just said, I just want to make sure that my kids have a head start in life because I didn't really get one. Okay. And so right there, I knew that I had touched her heart. And I said, well, what if we could help you think through the various things that could occur that could keep that from happening? She said, that'd be helpful. I said, well, give me some things. What could happen? She said, well, my investments might not perform, right? Maybe I get sued, but that's weird. I don't know why I would get sued, is what she said. She said, but my uncle needed long-term care. That could really get it, right? And so by touching that heart, then what we're going to do is I'm pulling together numbers for this individual, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to demonstrate mathematically how utilizing an insurance contract, I'm going to give her a couple different options, is going to be a way that's going to be able to fund that goal for her to make sure that that does not happen, right? And that's just an example of, again, touching the heart and the mind, where it's part emotions and then it's part math. So we're sort of bought in emotionally and then we justify it mathematically. But if we just go to math, no matter what the premium is, it's always just too high. And with respect, if you don't go through this process, you're probably wasting your own time and your clients. I say that with respect, because if you're just going to ask if they want it, the answer is no. Okay? Something I got from a colleague of mine is this last bullet point. Would you rather guess or would you rather know? Right, so if these things are important to you, do you want to guess or assume that that will happen, or should we carve something out to make sure that that happens? And I find that to be very powerful. Because, of course, what's the answer to that? I mean, nobody really wants to guess. They want to know. But in order to know, they got to do something. They got to put insurance in place, maybe. And I don't want to put insurance in place. Yeah, but if you don't put insurance in place, how much risk do you have that the legacy for your kids won't be fulfilled? How do you feel about that? You see that? I hope I didn't belabor that too much, but that was just timely because I had that call this morning. Andrew, would you add anything to any of that or any other comments on it?
No, that's great. I mean, you now, you know, following her wishes, right, and trying to fulfill her wishes as opposed to trying to, have her sign something that she may not want to, right? So it's changed the dynamic. I think, makes the whole planning process much easier, and the client is engaged, right? That's the most important thing. They engage. They're committed to uh, fund some of those plans that we discussed because this is essentially their legacy that they want to fulfill. It's not something that they're following from you. Another
Bingo.
thing too is, with inflation, if people want to leave $1 million, well, with inflation, after 20 years, that $1 million now becomes $500,000 at best. Now, if that $1 million is qualified money, with inflation and taxes, you potentially could be looking at best a third of that. So again, that's going to your question. Would you rather guess or would you rather know what that legacy would be? If you're leaving taxable accounts, you don't know at what tax rate in the future that money will have to be liquidated at. Could be, at best 70, 60, 50 cents on a dollar. So that's another reason to use some of these strategies to really strengthen that number.
Yep, exactly right. So if we know why we're having the conversation, we've set up the right context for having the conversation, we made sure that we addressed what's important to them and their emotions so that we can motivate them to operate in their own best interest. Now we're into showing a solution and showing the math. And so we're going to walk through a couple of case studies for a 65-year-old couple. And I want to show you a couple of unique things that we see and how we might look at this. Okay. So what you have here is a 65-year-old couple who want to provide $1 million tax-free to both children, right? And so in so doing, then what's the best way to do that? They can certainly use their portfolio to do that. But what if they really want to make sure it's there and we could lock it in? And what if we could get really good math? And so what we did is we're assuming a standard plus rate class with Prudential and paying the premium to maturity, meaning that you'd pay a premium every single year. And we went and we solved, if we want to create $1 million asset that happens to be called life insurance, but it's $1 million asset. It's $1 million, but it's only $1 million upon death. Okay. So we're buying this $1 million asset. What do we need to do to fund this asset? What does it look like? And so here is the internal rate of return page on this illustration. 65-year-old individuals, non-smoker plus. We've got $18,000 of annual premium to do this. Now let's pause. Is $18,000 a lot of money to put into an insurance contract? Yeah. You want to go ask your client, you want to give me $18,000 so I can buy you $1 million insurance policy? They're going to say no, and they might be mad at you, right? That's ridiculous. Why would I ever want to do that? I don't need this life insurance. No, but you might want it if you understood how this asset works. Okay, so how does this asset work? Well, this asset is guaranteeing, these are all guaranteed results based on the claims paying ability of Prudential, one of the largest, best companies in the entire industry. Okay. We know two things in this contract if they're approved at Standard Plus, right? They have to be eligible for this. We know two things. We know number one, we have a $1 million death benefit. And the second thing we know is that we have to service this death benefit by contributing $18,000 per year. So really we have three things we know, those two things. And the third thing is this client has this $18,000. It's already somewhere. It's already somewhere. Right away, they're thinking this costs me $18,000, and no, it does not. We have to allocate $18,000. It does not cost us $18,000 because we bought an asset. Okay, we bought an asset worth $1 million, but it's only worth $1 million at death. And so, what we have to answer is this a good deal or a bad deal? And I'm sure I got a bunch of math people on the call. I'm sure you're looking at this internal rate of return. Guess what? Spoiler alert, it's a great deal. So let's tell you why. Year one, you put $18,000 in. Right away, the value of this account is $1 million. If we had $18,000 in the investment account, what would be the value of that account? $18,000 plus or minus growth. This account's worth $1 million, which means that we have an 8,000% rate of return if these two people die in the car accident in year one. Okay. Mathematically, in year one, this would be the best performing asset that they've ever implemented anywhere. Now, I admit that the likelihood they're going to die in year one is very, very low, not only because they're 65, but because they were underwritten by a professional risk manager called Prudential. But it could happen, and if it did, this asset that everyone thinks costs too much became the best performing asset the client has ever had. 8,300% return tax-free. Yeah, okay, Rod, but that's not fair. All right, what about over 10 years? So over 10 years, paying $181,000, have the same $1 million, that represents a 29% return, guaranteed, non-correlated, and income tax-free to the heirs. Okay, Rod, but they're only 74. They're going to live longer. Yeah, you're right. Let's just jump out to 20 years. They pay in $362 into this asset worth $1 million. My return was 8.91%. That's ignoring the taxable equivalent yield here of 13.71. I think this is this running 33% bracket? Do you remember?
I believe that's the case.
Yep. So again, you have a 20-year guarantee of 8.91%, non-correlated and income tax-free. That beats the portfolio. If you were to reposition 18,000 for 20 years, for planning purposes, you aren't going to be planning for an 891 income tax-free return. But again, they're only 84. So what year are you running the retirement plan out to? If you're like most advisors, you're running it out to 95, roughly 30 years out. So we're out 30 years and now we return 3.68. So now if you followed me, you might be like, oh, Rod, I got you now. You see, 30 years now, 3.68 isn't so hot anymore, is it? To which I say, well, it's certainly not 8.91, but that is a 30-year guarantee of 3.68 income tax-free. If this was not called life insurance, would you possibly put any of your clients' money into an asset that would guarantee a 30-year return of 3.68% tax-free with no market risk? Right? That's how valuable this is. And so my premise here is not that this client should stop putting money in the market. Absolutely not. But I'm saying this is an asset class that will effectively guarantee that we have $1 million paid, and we know that it'll come in cash, and we know that it's going to return a 3.68% return or better over 30 years. Andrew, what are your comments on this?
No, I think that's exactly how you want to extrapolate it. Plus, when you pay from an outside account, the premium, you have to make sure that It's somewhat maybe conservatively invested because you don't want to potentially lose 20, 30% of that value while you're taking out $18,000 a year. So by shifting that risk to the insurance company, now you alleviated a huge portion of your portfolio where you can be much more aggressive to generate a high yield for the client that they can use for their retirement, traveling, all the things that they want to do in retirement.
Perfect. That's perfect. And that's the real premise that I want you guys to take away, is that this is an asset that is often overlooked. If it's not overlooked, we can determine whether this asset class should exist in our client's portfolio and to what extent. And then how does it interact with the rest of the portfolio, which is what Andrew's talking about. If we know that we have $1 million here, no matter what, does that allow us to be maybe a little more aggressive in the investment accounts? And the answer is probably yes. But I think what happens is advisors and clients don't give this kind of structure consideration, because in order for someone to do this, they're probably worth several $1,000,000. And you go, why is a 65-year-old buying insurance? You're just doing it for the commission, right? You're just doing it for the commission because they don't need it. To which, again, I say, I agree, you don't need it, but you might want it because of what I just described. We have 30-year numbers of 3.68, reminding you that that is a non-smoker plus rate. That's not a preferred or super preferred rate. And by the way, if we do this at age 55 for a wealthy individual, you'd be shocked how improved these numbers are. Right? So this is 65. We get this in the 50s, these numbers can be outrageously good. Okay?
One more comment, Rod, is let's say we do have a client that's maybe looking for $5 million because they will be affected by some of the sunset to federal estate taxes in a couple of years. Now the premium is 5 times the $18,000, right? Now, a couple of things. If we use an ILET, irrevocable life insurance trust, the death benefit now is taken out completely out of the client's taxable estate. Not only that, but we also, by paying the premium, we are reducing the client's taxable estate by funding an asset that is guaranteed and income tax free. So it's a double benefit. It's reducing the client's taxable estate, and then by using an ILET, you also completely taken out the death benefit from the client's taxable estate.
Yep. An estate planning attorney that I'm friendly with calls that the tax-free zone. An ILET in the tax-free zone, no taxes whatsoever, but we have to gift it out of the estate. But again, by doing so, we can save significant taxes as we've described, and that's under current laws, right? And if taxes go up, then again, that cost of taxes is higher than the cost of insurance. And that's the part that makes this make sense. So if these numbers made sense, one other thing that we want to make you aware of is maybe they ought not come out of pocket with $18,000 a year. We could supercharge that type of plan by using an annuity to actually fund that $18,000. So we should consider whether or not we could reposition a portion of the assets into an income annuity to fund that survivorship universal life. At the end of the day, it reduces our premium outlay. We're going to show you the math in a minute. It also reduces market risk, and that the net result at the end of the day is to maximize the total value of the legacy or estate by combining them together. So what do we mean by that? Well, remember, we had $18,000 a year every year was required. Well, Andrew went in and backed in to this $18,126. What kind of lump sum do we need today to fund that? Well, we would need $273,000 today in an annuity that would guarantee an income stream of $18,000 per year. That's pretty incredible. So remember this number 273, and I'm going to go back a couple pages. If we live out 30 years, they're going to pay $543 out of pocket. By funding it in that annuity structure, they're effectively reducing their outlay by almost half. And so where you might fund that annuity structure could be qualified or non-qualified numbers. The first place I would look at is old non-qualified annuities that are hanging around but aren't in the income plan. The second would be thinking about carving some money out of the qualified plan to be able to do something similar. And at the end of the day, if I only have to put 270 in here instead of 543 over 30 years, what happens to my internal rate of return on those dollars? It ultimately ends up going up. And that's that idea of that supercharging. Now, every situation is different and every client's different. And so sometimes it makes sense to utilize the annuity, sometimes it doesn't. But we wanted to bring that to your attention and again, satisfy the idea that we ought to consider doing something like that. Andrew, when you look at this kind of structure, what are the things that you pay most attention to relative to using this as the funding vehicle?
Yeah, I'm very excited about using this structure because two things. Interest rates are going up like crazy right now. So this has a very positive effect on these income annuities by the way of carriers announcing withdrawal rates are going up almost on a monthly basis. So, in addition, this particular product with Athene, a Sempro 10, is extremely competitive right now in the market. It does have an immediate 25% income-based bonus. And the withdrawal factors, really for a 65-year-old, when you consider that 25% income-based bonus, is north of 6%. So when you compare that to traditionally 4% withdrawal rule, we able to, add extra 2 points on the income plan. And now we are completely taking any market risk out of the equation. And not only that, but we hedging against death occurring, let's say, early, right? Because if you fund life insurance with single premium and death occurs early, the beneficiaries get a death benefit from life insurance only. By using this structure, look at the death benefit day one from the annuity. If clients tragically pass away the first year, the beneficiaries not only get the second to die death benefit of $1 million income tax free, but they also have $263,000 death benefit from this annuity, which essentially costed virtually nothing for the client to implement and purchase $1 million tax free legacy. But take a look at, age 85, age 90. There's still a death benefit from this annuity in addition to a guaranteed joint income of $18,126 to fund the lifetime premium. So again, for the right client who maybe has some assets that they may not need for income, Rod, to your point, if it's an IRA asset, they will have to take RMDs anyway at age 72. Why not start to kind of accelerate some of that, RMD subject funding into this legacy planning strategy? And again, you're saving a ton of money for the client over lifetime. You hedging against the market risk, so now you can be more, again, aggressive with the remaining portfolio to help with clients' other objectives, and you have a double dip in terms of death benefit from life insurance as well as the annuity. And not that it's the most important thing, but both of these sales are now commissionable, life insurance and the annuity.
Yeah, exactly right. So again, if you have clients that need to have this kind of conversation, please jot down their names and you can reach out to me or Andrew or George. So what opportunities exist for this type of strategy or a variation of this strategy? And we've kind of hit most of these. It's illiquid estates, those that that have large real estate portfolios or a small business or a farm. Those that have large IRAs with unwanted RMDs, right? Very few things that I've seen with clients make them more annoyed than having to take RMDs that they don't want to. And then, by the way, what happens? We take the RMD, we pay taxes, we reposition it where? Right back into the portfolio. Well, maybe some of that ought to be in a contract like this. Even at age 70 or 71 with a second to die policy, you can still get 20 and 25-year returns of maybe 4% depending on health. And so again, if you're 70 and you have a 20-year guarantee of a 4% internal rate of return on death in the tax-free zone, that's not a bad asset to consider having, especially if it shows up in cash, and especially if a third or a half of the IRA is going to go away, or if a third or a half of the portfolio is going, of the overall portfolio is going away to taxes in some way, shape, or form. Right? Those that want to be charitably inclined, you might have clients that give 20 grand a year away every year. go, hey, you know what? Have you ever considered, would you want to leave a legacy asset? I mean, how important is this? How are they going to get those dollars when you pass away? And how important is that to you? Well, you know what? I never really thought about it. Well, maybe you ought to consider, instead of giving them $20,000 this year, maybe you give them 10,000. Maybe you institute an insurance structure with the other 10,000 so that you can have a legacy gift to them upon death. So we've seen and done some work there, something to consider. And then a client taught me about utilizing life insurance as a long-term care estate replenishment. Well, everything's fine in your world. As we described, you said your biggest risk was that need for long-term care, right? But you have plenty of money and you're fine unless your portfolio gets eroded due to long-term care. Well, maybe if we had a life insurance asset out here on the side, that could effectively, again, make sure that that $1 million goes to our kids or replenishes any dollars that might be pulled out of the portfolio. So think about these when you're thinking about your clients and thinking about who needs to have this kind of conversation. All right, we're 1:45. We've got about 15 minutes more to go. Still got plenty to cover. So if we're not really talking about transferring dollars, but we're really talking about protecting dollars from the risk that we have a long-term care risk, which I've described as retirement portfolio protection and AUM protection. We took a 65-year-old couple similarly, and we said, okay, well, what are our best options for a 65-year-old who wants to protect themselves for long-term care? And so I put together just a snapshot here for you. By the way, we're moving into Long-Term Care Awareness Month in November. There's a good chance that that we will be focused on more specific changes in the long-term care marketplace, which we are seeing, and some things coming into the marketplace. So there's a good chance we're going to carve that out for the Coach's Corner for next month. But here we have 5 options, really 4.5 options, because 2 of them are Mutual of Omaha. And I want you to understand big picture what these options are and let you know that often with clients, I'll snapshot something like this so we can compare and contrast so that we can say no to 1 or 2 and go as deep in the other 2 as we need to. So what I attempted to do here was try to keep constant $4,000 a month for 4 years. It's not perfect because we can't do that in all structures, but that's what I'm attempting to do, is a $4,000 monthly benefit for 4 years with 3% inflation if we can. And so Securian has a really great product, although we have others in the marketplace, including Lincoln Money Guard and Nationwide, and they're becoming very competitive in today's environment as well. So I'm going to keep this at a 101. That's more of a 301 level. But Securian has a great product that pays out in cash. The way that I have this quoted is a $4,000 monthly benefit for 4 years with 3% inflation and a $96,000 death benefit if we never need long-term care. And so if we just took a one-time lump sum for 65-year-old individuals, we'd need $92,000 from the gentleman and $104,000 for the woman. And what that would effectively do is basically give them their money back. It's not perfect because we have $96,000 of death benefit. So if they never need long-term care, they get $96,000 back. But if they do need long-term care, they have $4,000 a month times 48 months. They have $192,000 of long-term care protection on day 1. So approximately double their contribution on day 1, but most importantly, then having that grow by 3% each and every year. And so this can be a very effective way to reposition dollars. Where we see this happening more often than not is when people have dollars in bank accounts, right? Earning little to no money. We peel them off from the bank accounts. By the way, they're in there earning little to no money, and you ask them, why is it there? And what you find is a combination of maybe 4 or 5 things. Number one, they're uncomfortable with market volatility. I'm sure you have some clients that are pretty uncomfortable with market volatility. Secondly, they want to be able to touch and taste their money, right? And you ask them what it's for, and they say, well, it's my emergency fund, it's my rainy day fund. That's where my kids will inherit it. That's where I'm going to pay from long-term care. You go, well, wait, what if we repositioned it into a product that would allow you to leverage that up significantly, right? On day 1, we can buy double the benefit for long-term care, and then it can grow each year by 3%. Okay, so it's really the opportunity cost is what this costs. This doesn't cost 92 grand for him. That's how much we have to allocate. What it costs is where that money is today and what interest are we losing. So there's a much lower barrier of entry if we're removing it from a bank account than if it's in the portfolio, right? We might have a 7% barrier for that. So it won't be right for all clients. But by the way, if we don't want to reposition it from the portfolio, maybe we just take dividends or interest from the portfolio, and maybe we fund one of these other structures. So instead of funding a lump sum, everyone thinks that insurance premiums have to be paid out of pocket and put into the budget. Well, sometimes we can let the portfolio pay for it by just taking distributions through dividends or through interest or a combination thereof. Okay. So before we hop down to that structure, I want to show you One America. Well, One America has a nice second to die structure that a lot of clients like. And this one works a little bit different. I told you I was trying to solve for $4,000 a month for 4 years each. Well, I can't do that in this product. But what I can get is $4,000 a month for 66 months in a shared pool for the clients. And I can have that inflation grow by 3% every year. And so what this policy is a second to die policy that'll pay $133,000 if we never need long-term care. If we do need long-term care, we have $4,000 a month times 66 months, which is $264,000 of long-term care benefit that's growing by 3% each year. That lump sum is $162,000. So this looks a little bit different, right? In my opinion, what's going on here is we give them 162, they're going to give us 133 back through death benefit. And so the other 30,000 roughly is effectively buying this $4,000 benefit for 66 months with inflation. And so I see value in bringing multiple solutions to clients because it's in the comparing and contrasting of these where people determine what they like and what they don't like. And then if we're showing a reallocation through lump sums, then we can talk about maybe you ought not do that. Maybe instead, we should let you keep that money invested, and maybe we ought to use one of these other designs. So Protective, and including many other companies, have designs like this, where we can get a $200,000 death benefit that would be guaranteed in all years, which would be to age 120, which is the actuarial age by which all of us will be gone. So you have a guaranteed universal life contract for $200,000, but you have the right to pull forward $4,000 a month for 50 months in this contract. What that means is that you're going to get $200,000 from death, or you get $200,000 from a long-term care advancement, or maybe a combination in between. Maybe we pulled on the long-term care benefit for 10 months, took $40,000 out, then passed away. The other 160 paid to the heirs. One of the nice things about this is that almost never do a husband and wife die on the exact same day. So that means one will predecease the other almost certainly, which means that a death benefit will be paid to that second spouse to the extent that the first spouse didn't need care. Right? Actuarially, women outlive men by 5 to 7 years. So for planning purposes, the man will probably die first without needing long-term care, and the wife will live 5 to 7 years longer and will need long-term care. Well, one of the drawbacks to this type of plan is we can't adjust for inflation. There's no way to adjust for inflation. However, if the husband dies first and the wife gets injected with $200,000 of cash, plus she has her own benefit. So this could work out real well, especially, by the way, all of these so far are 1035 exchange eligible. So a lot of times you might have a client that has a $30,000 cash value and a $50,000 whole life policy. They don't know why they have it. It's not in the income plan. Well, we can reposition that through a 1035 exchange to either partially fund a lump sum or possibly put a down payment down effectively and pull our premiums down, right? So the last one on there is Mutual of Omaha. I have it with and without shared care. So I have this quoted as $4,000 a month for 4 years, 3% cost of living for 20 years only, and then it stops. So it just mutes itself. Then I have it with a shared care. The shared care rider allows one spouse to go get 3 years from the other spouse's bucket if they need it. So if I go through my 4 years, I can go into my spouse's bucket and get 3 more. The healthy spouse has to maintain 1 year in their bucket. And here's our annual premiums in order to do that. Now, the issue with traditional long-term care, as you're probably aware, there's 2 issues, right? Number one, to the extent you don't need long-term care, there's no death benefit paid. So it's strictly a use it or lose it type scenario. Secondly, they won't guarantee that the premiums won't rise in traditional long-term care. And so when the professional risk manager and professional money manager called the insurance company won't guarantee you they won't raise rates, what they're effectively guaranteeing you is that they will raise rates, in my opinion. And so this is just kind of a snapshot to give you a representation of what's available in the industry. And although we're showing 4 carriers here, the reality is we probably have 12 to 15 carriers that have some sort of version of products that are similar. And like everything we do at US Advisors, we pull the best in breed, the best product in breed effectively. So we're very agnostic with regard to the companies we use. We know where the companies are in the sweet spots that we play. Okay. Andrew, comments on this, and we got 5 more minutes to wrap up.
Yeah, well done, Rod. Again, we can kind of extrapolate this on the one-on-one calls if you're interested in some of these strategies, but just keep in mind a lot of strategies do exist. They may have features and benefits that may suit certain clients, but not others. But I'm a huge fan of these asset-based LTC products just because of the guaranteed nature and the leverage and the tax-free benefit that they provide. With interest rates going up right now, we actually, for the first time in quite some time, in decades, hearing from insurance carriers saying that their long-term care premium is actually going down. So the leverage right now on some of these products, where you're repositioning an asset, is sometimes 5 times, meaning that if you put in $100,000, your long-term care pool will be $500,000 by the time you need it at age 80, 85. And this is all going to be coming out on a tax-free basis. We talked about estate protection. Well, even clients that are wealthy that can self-insure. Well, first of all, you're pulling the money out from probably qualified assets, right? So you, again, maybe collecting 70, $60 or cents on a dollar to pay for long-term care costs. And I can guarantee you, if there's no long-term care to pay for that, your clients' children, who probably are your future clients, are not going to be very happy because they have to now see their estate diminish at the rate of $10,000, $15,000 per month. If you did have a long-term care product to outsource that risk and protect the client's portfolio and the legacy to the next generation, I guarantee you your case to make yourself their future advisor is going to increase exponentially.
Yep, that's exactly right. And so in the last few minutes, we have a couple of pieces that we'll make available to you, and don't have a lot of time to review them, but they're really powerful pieces. So the first one here is with Principal. Yeah, we're calling it the Gift of Answers worksheet. It's all about being able to capture and document your plans. So this is a 20-page document that quite literally breaks out essential documents, contact and account information and insurance policies, final arrangements, and offers a checklist. So this not only is an organizational tool, it allows you to have a better conversation by being able to capture these things, right? And so if you haven't looked at this, let us know. It's a beautiful thing, including, again, just capturing all of these. It's a good opportunity not only for organization, but it's a good opportunity to potentially get referrals, because through this process, a lot of it's like, well, who would be your trustees, et cetera, and they identify important people in their lives that you may be able to help as well. Right. So if you haven't looked at this, please reach out to us or we'll send it out to you. This is a nice piece from Principal. Well, Prudential has a couple of nice pieces. They have this estate planning checklist, which, this would be something that I might send out to a client maybe ahead of the client review, right? And say, hey, do me a favor and take a look at this 2-page checklist and complete this, and we'll go through it together, right? The client review is a missed opportunity, in my opinion, for many of you. I say that respectfully. I've seen a lot of client reviews that are scheduled for an hour. There's 50 or 55 minutes of just catching up and where do we go on vacation? How are the grandkids? 5 or 10 minutes on performance, and then we're gone. Well, this could be a good opportunity to say, hey, let's make sure you have the answers that you need. Let's get you thinking about some of these items. And why don't we take a look at this checklist? Okay, so again, that's a nice piece from Prudential. Hancock has something somewhat similar, this estate planning client guide. Just like everything I've said or Andrew said or these guides, what I recommend you do is take what you like and drop what you don't. But if you're going to be successful in insurance planning, you have to do something on purpose. And we want to help you create your cadence. We want to be your success team. We want to give you the tools that you need. So these are just things that we're highlighting for you. And again, this is a nice piece as well. And again, due to time constraints, I don't have much time to give you all of that. Nationwide is actually offering to make free wills, right? And so a lot of people do not have a will. Nationwide will actually do that for your clients. It's going to be very basic, but it's very legal, and it's better than having nothing. And what I like most about this is if your client's willing to do this, then they should be willing to really engage in more appropriate, more robust planning. And so this could almost be a lead to get them to really engage in the planning conversation. So Andrew, I will give you the last few minutes to make any comments about these and wrap this up, knowing that we're right here at the top of the hour.
Yeah, I think, don't be a secret agent. Let your clients know, let your community know what you do and how you can help clients maximize their legacy, maximize their goals, and help them fulfill those goals, right? If you're not talking about this stuff, chances are your clients are not going to be asking about that stuff either. And then second of all, you don't have to be doing this by yourself. We have a great team here at US Advisors to help you with not only a lot of these resources, but have the right language, put together proposals, provide you with conversation openers. And by the way, if you are looking to maybe partner on a case, Rod is certainly willing to do that. So you can kind of learn from an expert, see how he goes through the process with your clients. So you can, again, learn from the best and then mimic the process with your other clients. But yeah, we're looking forward to speaking with you soon. I think the opportunity is huge, and most importantly, want to also say thank you for the business and thank you for the time for joining us today on this Coach's Corner.
It's beautiful. Well said, Andrew. I would just add, I'll close this meeting how we close our Monday morning meetings, which is let's be good leaders, let's help clients, and let's drive revenue to our practices. Really appreciate your partnership. Thank you all. Enjoy this beautiful day. Have a wonderful one.
Thank you.